This is Colin Digits. I'm here live in the Digitsclub with Rick, Launchpad School, episode 2. We're going to be learning. So for everybody who doesn't know, I attempt to know a lot of things about Launchpads. Rick here is quite new. He's been on the Launchpads for about 3 weeks, learning a tremendous amount. And in Launchpad School, I'm going to teach him some things. And while you're here, you can consume that content as well. We're going to pull up CoinMarketCap, walk through the first pools, because we are going to have a look specifically at what was that we just mentioned, the tokenomics. All right, so the launchpads are here. And then let's start with DAO Maker. Okay, see how they display the tokenomics of their pools. Because there's definitely always a pattern when it comes to tokenomics, which obviously tokenomics is one of the most important aspects. We got Xana, which is right here. There we go. Public round. Okay, they have here tokenomics. And you can definitely see this is more of a economy overview, right? How the token goes and how the NFTs move on the ecosystem. So it's definitely not what we're looking for. We're looking more for the actual vesting, etc. And you did briefly mention just now that it's not always available. I do believe that it should at least be clear which round, etc. you're participating in. But here we have metrics, and there we go. You see token distribution. So basically, what is important to know on these tokenomics, for tokenomics in general, for every project, is that there's no fixed layout, right? This means that any project can assign any specific amount of the tokens to not as they please, I would say. There goes a lot of research behind the tokenomics for most projects. So what you'll see, if there's a very limited amount of features available on the tokenomics, it's usually quite poorly designed, because you have to consider that this is all fixed on a smart contract. Some things can be adjusted, but a lot of things also cannot be adjusted, which means that on average, we see a team allocation, for example, right? A team allocation is usually 20%, advisors 5%. So we see advisors partners 5%. So that is coherent. 20% for team founder, right? But this has been reduced to 17, which means that there's 3%, which could have been allocated to the team, which now has been allocated somewhere else, right? And those are basically the foundational things that I look at when I know, because I've reviewed so many white papers, that I know 20% for team. If it's less or if it's more, the question is why, right? So the obvious thing, if we look at the basic math, is the ecosystem is 33%, right? Probably the team and the founder, they're looking for a desired amount, right? In terms of holding a certain amount of the market cap. So they were allowed to take less value, right? And they added that to the ecosystem, because that 3% is clearly added here, right? We have to make some assumptions, but that would make sense. Now, when we look at the next project, so if we go to DAO Maker again and we open the next tokenomics, we can basically push them next to each other and get like a good overview of the difference. So this is an NFT, so that's not, but this one is good. Which one is this? Wing Riders. Okay. Metrics, here we go. So what you will see, the big difference is liquidity staking 15%, right? Liquidity mining, farming incentives 40%, right? So one provides 15% of their tokenomics, 140, huge difference, right? In terms of the tokenomics, major difference. The sole reason why they would do this is because they have a different approach on how they run their business model, probably because their product is quite different, right? The problem here lies in that usually when the numbers become small, the allocation is very detailed, right? Initial liquidity, ring rider DEX and SEX, right? Environmental impact fund, ecosystem rewards. But what does incubation entities, what does that mean, right? There's no fixed name that all of the projects use for that allocation. So when you look here, ecosystem, what does that mean? There must be in the white paper a small explanation, but these companies like to keep this broad so they can deploy the funds as they see fit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So on the actual tokenomics in general, there's always some pattern. The pattern is usually there has to be allocation for liquidity. If they don't add allocation for liquidity, it means that the audience, the liquidity farmers, need to apply all the liquidity themselves. So what would happen if we would make a token, but there's no liquidity on the tokenomics? That's a good question. Because I just said it always has to be there. But what happens if it's not there?
I wouldn't know what exactly would be the consequences of that, actually, no.
How are we using that liquidity? What does it mean? Because liquidity is obviously like an economic term, but it doesn't directly relate. Okay, so ARC says not tradable. That is not completely true, right? Because anybody could add a little bit of liquidity. So there must be some liquidity for the trade to happen. Emerson says price can easily be dropped or shoot up, and that is correct. So liquidity works like this. There's two pools. Let's say US dollar, euro. I put them both here, right? If I want to sell euros, I can buy US dollar, right? Because it's like a one-sided transaction. So you go into the liquidity pool. The pool trades the funds, right? Back to you. So normally I give you something, you give me something back, two entities trading. But now I'm just trading against the liquidity pool, who is nobody. It's just a pool, right? But at some point, this pool goes out of balance, right? So the more out of balance the pool is, the higher the price volatility. So let's say you have only $10,000 in liquidity. If I then buy $10,000 worth of that token, there's 100% price difference on the token. Right? So the price shoots up. And then if I sell everything, the price rockets down. So to make sure that your price doesn't shoot up, shoot down all the time, they supply a lot of liquidity so people can trade. And then there's another thing. It's all about liquidity, which we're not going to discuss right now, but there's arbitrage companies that trade the difference and they keep the pool stable. So somebody is in charge of keeping the pool stable. The pool is active. As long as the amount is big enough, then trades can smoothly happen and operate. And then everybody's happy. So if a company doesn't supply liquidity, then you can be assured that the price will shoot up and down, specifically in the beginning, which is obviously not recommended. So a centralized exchange listing, right? Can you name me some centralized exchanges?
Binance.
Binance, KuCoin, Coinbase. Bybit, Gate, Maxi, OKX, there's like a ton of them. They always require that the company provides liquidity when they are going to list, because obviously on a centralized exchange, on a DEX, decentralized exchange, if the liquidity pool would be empty, you can't trade, right? Like ARC said. But on a centralized exchange, these people only make money if trades are being made. So they never want the liquidity pool to be depleted. So they take charge of that. So that's one of the reasons why liquidity is very much important on the light paper. The problem is sometimes it's called funding, sometimes it's called liquidity, sometimes it's called farming pools, right? And I think when we get more adoption in the crypto space, that the light papers will also be more coherent. Everybody will refer to it as liquidity. However, they like to keep it vague so they can deploy the funds, as I said, as needed. So then we have team, 20%-ish. Liquidity must be there. Usually they have staking rewards, right? For almost 95% of the tokens will offer staking rewards. If they have node operators like blockchains, etc., they have like people that run the node that get rewards, similar to like a staking model, and then the advisors, right? 3 to 5%. Why are these advisors separate from the team? Why would you just not include them in the team?
Ooh.
It's an interesting one.
Well, if you were to ask me, I suppose it's because they're really not part of the team. Usually they,
well, there we go.
yeah, well, there you go.
Correct.
They just give advice, and that's, yeah, I don't think they get briefed on the all of it. They're not in the entire process.
Yeah, so they genuinely don't belong with the company, right? If you remember the minus of Cadenia AMA that I did, I specifically asked the founder, why is one of the founders on the advisory? That's weird, because advisors are external, not internal. But they had, he started with the team, and then he got removed because his job got obsolete. So they moved him to the advisors. So then it makes sense, right? But yeah, normally advisors are external, team is internal in terms of the processes. Then when we look at tokenomics, right, what is left? Ecosystem, right? Ecosystem product development, depends on how you would call it, right? The main thing when you look at tokenomics is that there should be, or at least for your understanding, the easiest way is that there are several sales rounds, right? So that's where the money is being raised. So they need the money usually to fund the development, right? If they have already developed the product, it's usually pocket money or scale money, right? To go from startup to scale up to enterprise level. What are the 4 rounds of the sales that we can do? Starting at the earliest one, all the way to the most recent one before TGE.
Right. All right. Hear me out. I believe we start with the seed.
Seed.
Then I believe it was production. Nah, I know the second round is for the people involved with the project, like the developers and the people that are very early but will give service for participating in that round. And I thought it was called production.
Yes. No.
But it's not production.
You're right. So it's also not for the people on the team. So the team is not included here, but your explanation is correct. It is for people that support the project with like marketing, with other assets, with connections. It's called strategic.
Right. Strategic.
So it's seed, strategic, but your explanation was good. So at least you understand what you're talking about. But it doesn't involve the team. And then we have 2 left.
Private and public.
Private and public. Perfect. Where is the token the cheapest?
The first one, seed.
And where is the risk the highest?
Seed, I suppose.
Seed. And then the cheapest is on public, but the risk is also the least. What would happen if I would raise money before the seed round? What is that called?
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I would not know that.
It's actually quite easy. It's
really?
pre-seed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pre-seed. And usually pre-seed involves equity, right? So the interesting part of tokenomics that are incubated on Launchpads, that they basically don't sell part of their company, right? So they only sell the token value and the utility of that token on a SAFT agreement. So there's no equity involved in a deal. So equity means actual shares in the business, right? Where pre-seed and sometimes even seed on the bigger deals, it involves equity, right? Because if you are that early, some of these seed rounds are done 2-3 years before the actual TGE, right? So in that case, the company is basically just starting out. It depends on why they're raising the funds, right? Usually for development. Let's look at the Digits ecosystem. We haven't raised funds, right? What is that called?
You haven't raised funds at all. And what's the name of that?
Yes, it's a different model that we use.
Yeah, I know the module that is used, but I wouldn't know the name of that. No.
It's called Bootstrap.
Bootstrap.
Yes. So we bootstrap the business, basically meaning the revenue that we have, we spend it for the growth. And in other models, they raise money and they spend that money for the growth.
Right.
The thing is, we keep 100% control of our company, but we move a little bit slower than the rest. Although it's funny that in the bear, we move faster than the people that raise money, but that's because of different issues with their businesses, I would assume. All right, interesting. So yeah, so far so good. I'm very, you're already very much ahead on all these things, but I have more questions, right? Specifically on the Launchpad vesting, right? Let me pull that up for you right here. So we have an example here, right? Seed at 6/4 of a cent, right? Then 1 cent, 1 cent. There's a 1.6 million raise, 3 million, 1 million. For TGE, 120 days cliff, then linear vested over 32 months. 10%, 120, linear vested over 30 months, 10%, 120, 30 months. When it says 4% at TGE, what does that mean?
I suppose the start of the round.
One more time.
I suppose that would be the start of the round. So the start of the seed round.
No. When it was started, no. This is so the vesting is basically, well, that's the question ultimately. What does TGE mean? That's also a good one. It's a difficult one. I know. The thing is, when you go over all these things, it takes time, right? To learn all these acronyms, to learn all these minor details. That's why I'm calling you out right now, because every single week, you will not forget this. This is like so important. But once you're like all on top of it, you're like, you know, I know what it means, but can you explain it? Those are two different things, right? So that's why I'm explaining it right now. TGE, token generation event. Yes, it will come back all the time. So when it says lock up 4% at TGE, so the token generation event happens, everybody has invested all the rounds, right? And they need to wait until they get their tokens at TGE, right? Because then we deploy the contract and the people can get their first tokens. How much do the seed investors get?
4%.
4%. And then private gets 10%. And public also gets 10%. Why do they get more than private and public? Less. 4% is less than 10%.
I guess it mainly has to do with the fact that they got the tokens for much less money in the first place.
Yes. So when this token gets listed, at what price or higher would we assume that it gets listed?
You mean after the public sale?
Yes. So the public sale price was 1 cent.
Yeah.
So when the TGE happens, they're going to list on a DEX or a centralized exchange. So for which price or higher?
Well, I definitely think for about a cent, maybe 10 cents. No, not 10 cents. That's a bit much, but definitely more than a cent. I would say,
the thing is, we cannot make assumptions. So when you say 10 cents, either if you say 10, 9, 8, 7, that's all incorrect, right? It's either 1 cent or more, because the public round is 1 cent. So it can never be less than 1 cent, right? Here is the coincidence that private is also 1 cent, but public is usually the TGE price, because as soon as they add liquidity, usually the price moves up a little bit. So 1 cent or more, right? But in this case, I would assume 1 cent. So now looking back at the seed price, if they get 4% TG and those people get 10%, they get more, right? But they also have 36% ROI before the token even goes live, right? They have bought it for 0.064. If you add 36 cents, it becomes 1 cent, right? So 36% is their gain. If you would give these guys, so no matter what you give them, they're going to sell. In this market, they're going to sell for 36%. That's fine, right? So that's why they give them a lower percentage. They need to give them something, right? Because they've waited for so long. But generally, they don't give them that much because then they wreck the price.
Right.
And that's also not what you want. So they try to find the balance there. Okay, then we have all the TGEs finished. You get a 120-day cliff. What does that mean?
Over the 120 days, you will get to release the rest of your, you get to sell the rest of your tokens.
Is that what that means?
I think so.
So it says 120-day cliff, then linear vested over 32 months.
Ah, okay.
So
the
what does
32
this
months,
first part mean? What does this first part mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, let me see. Well, this graph is not that helpful. Sometimes they use a different graph, but this one is not that helpful. Maybe you can uncheck this. Yeah, okay. So let's see if we can go to the seed round. So the seed tokens. Okay, so in month 1, the TGE, 15th of July, there's 10 million tokens. Yes. And then the next month, it's 10 million, 10 million, 10 million. And then it takes 3.5 months, 3 months, before it increased to 17.5 million. You see? And then every month thereafter, it goes up, 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 up.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
what does the cliff mean?
Yeah, they're not going to add any more tokens to the total supply.
Yes. So if you invest in the seed round, you get 4% of your tokens at the token generation event. Then you need to wait for 120 days. That's what the cliff means. So the cliff means we jump off the cliff and we don't come back. We need to wait. And then you get linear vesting over 32 months, right? What does that mean? Linear vesting.
Linear. It's going to go with an X amount every time, where you will probably, like I said earlier, get your tokens released to you.
Okay, so you did this, right? Linear.
That's linear, right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's very important.
Linear.
That's why they call it linear vesting, because the linear part is very important. So this is linear, right? We can see the uptrend. If you look at the crosshairs, it's perfect, right? The blocks, it's basically a straight line. It doesn't differentiate. It doesn't go hyperbolic, nothing like that. Okay, so what is the amount, percentage that we get across 32 months?
4%. No, that's ridiculous. You already have 4%, and over that time, you will get 96.
96%. Yes. So how much do we get per month in that case?
That's some calculating we got to do. So that is 96 divided by 32.
Yes.
I'll need a calculator for that. 3. Okay, you get 3%. Catch
3%. So it's basically it's 96. So 3 times 3 is 90, and then times 3, 6, 96. Quick math.
Very quick math.
So 3% per month in that case. Okay, now we look at the next one. These guys got 10% TGE, same cliff, but they only got 30 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is still 3%. So they got more at TGE. The vesting is shorter, but they still only got 3%. And the same thing here. Why would you give them a cliff? What is the benefit of that cliff?
The benefit is that not everyone sells their coins immediately as it gets generated. So you don't want to have the price crash right away.
Okay, but on the TGE, they get a decent amount of coins.
Yeah.
Yes. So we would push, let's say, in terms of value, 4% of 1.6 million. That is not that much, right? If we go with 1%, 160. So yeah, this is about, I think 50K, something like this. 16, 32, no, like 64K. And then 10%, 300K and 100K. So you're talking about 470K on TGE that's being released in terms of funds raised, right? That is then in circulation, right? People can buy this, people can sell this, people can hold this, whatever people want to do. But why would you make them wait 120 days before they can get the rest of the tokens and then let them wait almost 3 years?
Well, again, you want to keep the price of the coin high and steady. So if you were to not give them a 120-day cliff, they would just sell right away to get their profits when it's high.
Yeah.
The price.
So why is it a problem that people sell?
Lowers the price.
Does
everyone
it?
sells at lowest price. I suppose it does.
Yeah, but
You
what
have
if
more coins in
people sell and other people buy?
Yeah, well, then it would be no problem. But I guess there's not people buying.
You remember my picture on why Launchpad tokens devalue? So it has to do with supply and demand, right? So let's say you're correct, Rick. I'm very impressed. You said they are selling these tokens. They are. They're doing the cliff, so people cannot sell these tokens. But I want to go deeper. Why is the project doing this? So the quantity of tokens in circulation is the 470K, right? It has a certain price. And if the supply is high, but the demand is low, the price will go down because they will sell it. And there's nobody to buy it, so price goes down because people think it's worthless, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't sell it. So when we go back to the cliff, specifically the cliff on the overview, you would only bring tokens into circulation for like staking, liquidity farming, give them a big cliff and long vesting if there's no direct utility for the token. So there's no direct utility for the token. So it's unlikely. Hola. It's unlikely that there will be a lot of demand, right? So there will be supply. There's not a lot of demand, which means that the product is very likely not ready yet. So they're still building the product. So while they're building the product, they want to keep the supply of the tokens low because otherwise it just keeps devaluating. Make sense?
Fair enough. Yeah.
So long vesting usually means there's not enough utility for the amount of tokens that they're going to release, but they have to put it on the smart contract. Why? Because at some point the ecosystem will be ready. And if then there's not enough tokens, the price will skyrocket out of the fucking sky. So the economy always needs to be balanced. So of course, short-term problems for long-term solutions, we rather have that than short-term solutions which create long-term problems. Make sense? And that's why, so I did a call with the tokenomics advisor last week, and I'm pretty good at tokenomics, but this guy's on a different level. It's $480 an hour, right? Which is a pretty decent fee, I think, for such a guy. And he's a smart guy, but the whole thing is that it is truly an expertise to go beyond the basics, right? And I think the basics are already extremely difficult on these tokenomics. So why is this happening? What is the thought behind it? And these guys basically have the skill to design everything, which is, I mean, they're probably one of the best IDO buyers in the game, right? Because I think that when we consider launchpads and all of the stuff around it, then we look at projects like, oh, what about the team? What about the foundation of the product, which is all very important, right? But that's basic as fuck. Everybody can open their eyes and read what's on the paper. And then the tokenomics, it's way more about understanding tokenomics and reading them properly than just reading them. Two different approaches. All right, let's go back to our overview. Xana. Okay, we have the vesting here. And I think we completed that pretty good. Then is there anything else where they have information? Because we only have Downmaker open right now, but there are definitely a lot more. So 50 million is the valuation. Token circulation, DAO screening. Okay, it's all not that interesting. Just trying to see if I can have some more interesting questions for you regarding this, but so far so good. Are there any other questions people are writing in the chat? If there's any questions, I can pick them up, but so far everybody's trying to hold back because they probably don't want to get it wrong. But that's all good. No, I think the best thing is, even if you don't know if you're right, just to basically say it, right? And then understand why, or you might not be right, or why there's maybe a better answer or a different way of explaining it. That's how you get better quite quickly. You know, I feel like a lot of people are afraid to say the wrong thing, and that's why they never learn anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's not like I have much of a choice whether I give the answer or
True.
not. But
True.
yeah,
Also true.
progress.
Why is there nothing here? They don't have anything. I thought they did have some. But let's otherwise look at their pitch deck. So they also have tokenomics. So we did with Digitsclub, we actually did the Paragon sale. So the tokens are right here. It's quite small, but so it's seed strategic public. You can see no private round, right? Advisors 5.5, a little bit high. Marketing
Yeah.
19, reserve 9.3, team 20, again staking 20, market maker 1%, and liquidity 4%. So liquidity is there, staking is there, team is there, and then the rounds plus the advisor. So you only have marketing, which is usually there, and they use a reserve, and they also assign 1% for the market maker. What does the market maker do? It's also a good
Never
question.
seen it on the tokenomics, actually, now that you
No,
mention
because
it.
usually it's inside the liquidity.
Right.
They split it here, but usually it comes out of the liquidity allocation. The market maker basically makes sure that they sell and buy tokens to create stability in the market. And usually this is done on centralized exchanges, right? To ensure no major falls, no major risings. Obviously, there might still be a lot of movement, right? They charge a fee, they make some money there. But it's definitely important to support them with tokens in the beginning to make sure they can stabilize and regulate the course of the token progression. So of course, that's like a whole business model on its own. And that's why you outsource that to a market maker who takes part of that. So one thing I did want to ask you before, and now I remember, is a very interesting one, I think. Sometimes you see on Launchpad that they're launching a project, right? Regular opening of a pool. What's the difference between that and an incubation?
Ooh. Yeah, good one. So the incubation is for a project that wants to get started, I suppose, like in the very, very early stages. So it's an incubator that will start and help the project from before the seed round and the pre-seed round, I suppose. And a normal project on the Launchpad will be at, I believe, the public rounds most of the time, sometimes the private rounds. So I guess the incubation period is before that time.
Okay, so what does incubation mean? Because that's what you said correctly. So I want to emphasize that first.
Right. It is growing and starting a project.
Yes, specifically growing the project, right? So we're a Launchpad. What is their business model? Raise funds. That's it, right? That's what they do. So if they incubate, it means they do more than just raising funds in that case. So whether the incubation is from seed or public, it is likely that it starts at public for the Launchpad. So usually it's private and public, right? But the Launchpads don't get involved until the private and or public round. So what happens is with incubation, it is very often that the Launchpad or the company behind the Launchpad invest into the project themselves, which means they have a direct interest and they change from launching to incubation, which means that they deploy marketing, right? So they use their KOLs, they use their resources, they make business connections for them, they make introductions, they go way beyond the regular Launchpad service that they could offer, which also involves marketing stuff, but this is way more extensive. And the main difference is usually the direct interest that they have in the performance, right? So when they say that a Launchpad is incubating something, it's like the indicator, which most people don't know, that the Launchpad itself has a high priority on this project. So the quality tends usually, well, we would assume, to be better. And that's
Right.
why incubations from a business to business point of view is very common, right? It's basically you take an interest, you put in a lot more work and you get the rewards. But I feel that a lot of investors don't understand what this means properly, that an incubation is basically a signal like, hey, these guys, they're making some moves, this is interesting. And therefore, I did ask you that question.
Yeah.
But perfect. Yeah, the incubation part, as long as you understand what the incubation is, then it's fine, right? Then it's clear. But if people
basics,
don't
yeah,
understand, they're like, I don't know what the incubation is, then it doesn't work.
yeah. I mean, you see it so much. I think every 40% of every launchpad that I look at has an incubation program. You see it so much. So yeah.
We have our own incubation program with
that
the
right?
Digits ecosystem. Yeah, it's called Digits Accelerator. It's in the light paper. It's not much public information about it, but we do have some interested parties for that. The reason is, like, you can imagine that these launchpads have a KOL network, influencers, right, to spread the message. They have a lot of other launchpads. They have connections with VCs. They have connections with media companies. So they have everything in their network. So it only makes sense that if somebody is going to incubate, you can go to a marketing agency and let them incubate, but it's very expensive. And you're already doing business with the Launchpad, so you might as well let them do the incubation. You just need to know which partner you're selecting, because the quality of the incubation might differ in terms of, preset agreements and everything. But it's definitely a very interesting business model. That's what I like. Launchpads going beyond just their regular service of raising money. Because ultimately, you could do that even on like a decentralized launchpad. Let's look at that. So can you name, let's do 2 tier 1 launchpads.
Tier 1. Does that include DAO Maker?
Well, we'll put DAO Maker on 1. Yes.
Then I have to come up with another
So
one.
the question is
that one?
Which one?
Cyberfi.
No.
No, tier 2?
Yes. Maybe even tier 3.
Damn it.
So the question is, what determines a tier? Because the thing is, normally you would do it based on experience. That's how I would define them on my experience being in the market. But the thing is, if you don't have much experience like you do, you need some metric to track in order to classify them. What's the easiest way to classify crypto projects?
Money raised.
That would be interesting, but what if the project does really well? Or when the project does really bad, then the money that they raised is not really that relevant.
Right, so community sentiment.
Sure, and how is the community sentiment? Because if somebody might say bad and somebody else might say good. So we only work with numbers, right, as investors, digits. So ultimately, which digits are we looking for? No cheating, no reading the chat.
Market cap.
Market cap. Yes, we use the market cap, right? So the market cap is the price times the total tokens in circulation, which is the valuation of the business of the token project at that point, right? DAO Maker has the highest valuation. Then we get Polka Starter, then we get CDFI. Those are your 3 tier 1s. Everything outside the tier 1 is tier 2, unless the market cap goes too low. Sorry, we're still busy. It's only going to be another 10 minutes. I hope that's okay. Tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So you got DAO Maker, CDFI, Polka Starter, and then 2 for tier 2. Which ones do you got?
That's him. I'm not going to say Cyberfi because that would be literally cheating. Polka X.
I don't know what their market cap is actually. I also have not looked at your video about it, so I will take your word for it.
All right. Yeah, I should probably not just list all of the ones that I covered. No, I wouldn't know another tier 2 one, especially because you said it is in order to know what tier they are, or to know a couple of tier X, how many launchpads, you have to know how to determine the tier, right? So I can tell you, some launchpads that I've done that I feel like are very big launchpads, but like you said, if you haven't actually looked at the market cap, you don't know. So I that would be the only one I would submit.
Well, for example, it has to do, so I said that it's based on my experience, right? So I compare it with all the other launchpads that I know, how the team behaves, the project they select. So for example, Unix is a really nice, it's a launchpad that has done 0 projects, but we would place them in tier 2 because of this project they select, right? The lineup that we know they have, they got Shrapnel, they got Delysium, Cradles, those are all basically, if all those launches are happening and they go well, it's tier 1, basically. But because they haven't launched anything and it's just plans, they move to tier 2. It's definitely not tier 3. You can basically tell from the team that there's not tier 3. So tier 3 would be smaller launch pads. They might still be really good, like Paragen, right? They hover between tier 2, tier 3, basically, because they do really well, but they don't have the ambition to become huge, that type of thing. Another one that is definitely tier 3. Tier 3 is the lowest tier, so AnyPad would be tier 3. But if you would make 5 tiers, then AnyPad is tier 5, right? But it's because we only do 3 tiers that they end up right there. But the tiers are quite important to basically grasp how big is their network, how much reach do they have, how much money can they raise. So, for example, TrustFi, we had an amazing conversation, I think last week with TrustFi, very small launchpad, right? They only have a couple of hundreds of users. They sell out every single pool that they do, but they only raise like $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. If you look at DAOmaker, they're raising $500,000, right? But they have way more reach and therefore more demand for the token and therefore a higher valuation. So these things are all basically aligned in one process, the different tiers. And everything around it. Quite interesting, because it doesn't mean that a small launchpad with a small market cap is a shit pad, right? Exactly. It offers a lot of opportunities for a different type of investor, because an investor that only has $100 to spend, it's very unlikely that you would get allocation on DAOmaker ever, right? If so, it would be like a lucky lottery draw, but your allocation on trust fund might be guaranteed, and that's different products, different offers for different things. And then I think the quality and how the team performs, like those are like the most important things for like longevity. If we would look at something, you did a couple of reviews already, which is quite interesting. Did you cover Hypercent yet or not yet? I know you did KD launch 3 times.
Yeah.
I'm actually
I can dream of that.
On KD launch tomorrow on their YouTube channel. Because we're famous.
Really? Again?
Yes. No. I'm going into their audience tomorrow.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, the Hypercent, the model is quite interesting, because I did the Minds of Cadania sign up, and I wasn't even able to get guaranteed allocation, which I was quite surprised. But yeah, so I got like 3 lottery tickets or something. We'll see how that goes. But the tiers is probably something we'll do next week, because I think the tiers are really cool to discuss, but also very complex. So on the tokenomics, I mean, like, we can talk endlessly about tokenomics. I think we covered the most important parts today. The questions were quite hard. The problem was I was supposed to obviously send you some things to cover today, but I had somebody here in the office for like the last 2 hours, which took up all my time. It was quite interesting, but these things happen. We need to build the Digits empire one brick at a time, step by step.
Do it. I was going to say we'll do it raw, but that I should probably not say it like that. But we'll do it without preparation.
You're talking with Arc too much. That's what I see. No, all good. Yeah, no, I mean, like, this is good. Like, the thing is, I definitely don't want you to be uncomfortable, but the main thing is, if you don't know, you don't know, right? And we're definitely here. That's basically how I learned everything, right? But I'm more like, I don't give a fuck in general. So I was like, kept asking people when I didn't know, like, how does this work? How does this work? How does this work? And then people kept feeding it to me. And then obviously you take in all the information, and it's never perfect. You need to still align all the information, like things like TGE, token generation event. It comes back and back over and over again. The vesting, I like that you can give your opinion on how these projects work, how everything goes, like the games and stuff. Like, that's one thing, right? But as soon as you take like a deep dive into like tokenomics, everybody's like, wow, like, that's the thing that everybody can understand, but most people lazy. And because they're lazy, you need to be able to explain it to them, because ultimately we want them to not make the right decision, because we can never really make the decision for them, but we want them at least to be as informed as possible to try and make the right decision. Because at the end of the day, that's our job, provide the right information in the right format. And if then you still don't understand, then you can fuck off, right? That is done. End of the story, because we keep it real. That's it. For this week, Launchpad School episode 2, have tokenomics, have a lot of questions. Rick, I thank you for your participation. Next week, we'll cover the tiers, which I think will be very interesting. I will leave you to it with your girlfriend. I assume she has the dinner ready, so that's very nice. And then I will check back in with you next week for the next episode. Thank you so much, everybody watching at home. I appreciate your time. Have an amazing rest of your day.